Well, good day. Welcome to Talks. I'm Daryl Rosenstein, your host. Today, we're going to be talking about sales intelligence and scaling a startup. And our guest today is Evan Liang, the founder of LeanData, a leading provider of sales intelligence and sales acceleration technologies for B2B firms. Evan, thank you so much for joining us.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me on, Daryl.
Well, absolutely my pleasure. And I wanted to just start by asking you a couple questions about why you went into sales intelligence. I mean, I work with hundreds of startups within the e-commerce and martech space that all use or have used a sales intelligence solution, many of them LeanData. And obviously, it provides an incredibly valuable go-to-market accompaniment to their motions. What was it that got you into sales intelligence?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of startup founders, I think I experienced the pain point myself. So at my last company, I was a general manager, and we had Salesforce and an inside sales team, and we were bringing in marketing automation. And as we were bringing those two systems together, we ran into a lot of data and process challenges, and that's it really made my teams inefficient. And that's when I kind of viscerally felt the pain and realized a lot of other people were going to struggle with the same thing. And if I could have a company that helps make other companies' sales and marketing teams more efficient by solving data and process challenges, it might be a way to grow a pretty interesting company. And so that's kind of the light bulb moment that led me to starting LeanData.
Nothing like experiencing pain to actually make you want to find a solution to it. It's like anything to get away from this. Like, gosh, this pipeline is not filling itself. In terms of the competitive landscape that you encountered when you began going your go to market with LeanData, what did you see out there that was essentially the build versus buy versus installed? I would say erstwhile competitors at that point.
Yeah, no, it was mostly greenfield. I think at that point in time, most people were doing something in house. Our initial technology was really around fuzzy matching. So how do you know that like a Gmail account or a corporate email are the same person? And so initially, our competitive steps were the dedupe vendors. Think of like CRM Fusion. Think of like a Ring Lead. So it was those folks that were just kind of doing data cleanup. Our vision was always to do something broader than that and help people with a broader set of challenges. But they were the initial tools that were out there. But like I said, most people were doing something in house, and a lot of them just weren't feeling the pain yet because, like I said, I was a little bit early onto the MA wave, marketing automation, and I realized that as you integrate systems, as this CRM ecosystem grew, this pain around data and processes was about to get a lot worse. And so, like I said, it was for better or for worse, as we'll talk about. We had to pioneer and build our own category. There are great things about doing that, and there are challenges of doing that. And so, I would say it wasn't like, hey, there's just like there's a whole bunch of big competitors that we were trying to displace. We were literally trying to do something that didn't exist beforehand.
Well, with sales intelligence, it really it comes down to obviously convincing the head of sales, which is your target audience, that you're going to bring them data and insight that they don't have, particularly around intent. Really, you're trying to identify the ideal circumstances for the sales team to add a client or to take an additional motion in their sales process within the pipeline. What did you see out there in terms of the data that the client had, and how reliable was it, and how able were they to actually derive intent from the data that they had?
Yeah, so I think the first part of that was the initial thesis was like, hey, do you have dirty data in your CRM? And like, if you ask people that question, everyone's going to raise their hand, right? And so that's the initial thing, but that's at a high level. Dirty data is bad, right? I think the second order for us, the evolution was really around the ABM motion. And so a lot of companies, when we we're starting to think about things being account based. Now, sales teams had always been account based. They were just so happy the marketing teams were starting to think about that. And when they started thinking about things being account based, one of the key data challenges that folks ran into was that the systems weren't designed from leads to match into accounts. There was this fundamental crack and schism inside the database, right? That just didn't allow that thing to match. And when we were looking at some initial clients, we realized 50 to 75% of people's leads were in their existing database matched into their existing accounts, but they weren't seeing it that way. Salespeople were working on it lead by lead. So even if like you have an account and another lead comes in, it may go to you, it may go to someone else. And that just fundamentally breaks the whole idea of being account based, right? Everything should go to. So LeanData was the first pioneers to use our fuzzy matching technology to solve lead to account matching. We were shocked that this problem had existed for so long. But like I said, people were just moving to account based. Once we solved that problem and unlocked other areas that we could help sales and marketing teams to solve, especially in that go-to-market motion of account based. Today, we work across any go-to-market motion, but that was the initial kind of wedge, I would say, that kind of made folks, especially on the sales side, realize they need a solution like LeanData because there had been nothing in place beforehand.
Well, it's fascinating to hear that because I also work with a number of firms that are targeting consumers. So they're dealing with data stacks and silos within their marketing automation package, within their CRM package, within their customer service package, within their loyalty package, and all of those different data sources in order to derive that intent around what is this persona doing requires an overarching intelligence to look at all those sources and match it up. And you're doing the same thing on the B2B front. The fact that accounts, you could be talking about a global 100 account where, it's a very specific set of individuals that are at that organization that are going to be your economic buyer, your champion, your change manager, whoever it be. And even within large enterprises, that link between lead and Salesforce automation package didn't exist, and you crafted that. You've created a tremendous amount of value just by putting the data together. Now, in terms of being able to activate that data, what is LeanData started in terms of its offering, in terms of what sort of channels was it optimized for, and what are you doing now? How's that evolved?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, the first go-to-market motion that really was disruptive was around ABM and just making those linkages. So, to make sure that if you have a target account of 500 target accounts, you have reps assigned to that, making sure that those leads got to those right reps. It's primarily mostly an inbound motion, inbound to ABM. So, how do you make sure your inbound team and your ABM teams work well together? Since then, I think the key thing for us and sort of scaling startup has always been being very customer focused. So how do we work with some of these customers, understand their pain points? And one of the things we always try to be mindful of, especially when we're onboarding new employees, is if a customer is saying there's a pain point, listen. Right? Don't just be like, hey, you bought the solution for X. We will always encourage them. If you hear it 2 or 3 times, tell us, because across our customer base, it may be happening more often, and that may lead to our next big product innovations. So I would say like the evolution of that went from like really just the ABM use case to LeanData is oftentimes used as a horizontal process around what we call revenue orchestration across any go-to-market. So we help people today, whether you're inbound, outbound, ABM, channel-based, product-led. There's Forrester's pushing this new thing around buying groups, opportunity-based. It doesn't matter to us. It's all about how do we orchestrate these go-to-market motions so that our customers can be successful around their sales and marketing teams. And so that's the evolution of our product. Is we've really expanded the breadth of how we help them and been very, very flexible of doing things. And the great thing about the interesting thing about sales and marketing go to market is everyone, I describe it as a snowflake. Everyone's kind of unique, right? But they're all made of the same pieces. So today you might be doing round robin and territory. Tomorrow you might be doing ABM. There's probably someone who has a similar go to market motion as you. And we try to innovate on behalf of everyone so that we can anticipate your future needs, even though you might not have that today. So a lot of our customers are always amazed at the breadth of what we have. And we have that breadth because we get to work with leading customers who are always pushing the envelope in all different directions. So.
Well, I mean, you've certainly amassed a tremendous amount of data around these global accounts and what motions are successful. What are the end results? What transactions are occurring as a result of these engagements? And how are these deals happening more quickly? How are the reps getting more productivity from those leads and being able to really provide that revenue operations organization a blueprint for what works in terms of, if you're following this data, it's going to lead to a deal more effectively, and identifying which buying personas within the organization are getting you the most traction at a very basic level. Obviously, the vast majority of my clients are in the martech and e-commerce space, and they're a lot of early stage firms, and they're trying to find their ideal client profile in many cases, trying to really develop their go to market. And what would your advice, or I would have to say your favorite business case be of users of LeanData in that scenario in terms of developing their go to market using your sales intelligence?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, the key part for us is something we have internally called audit logs. So that captures what happened. So, pre lean data, a lot of these systems run kind of in a black box. You don't know actually post fact why something happened in your system the way it did. And so we're kind of pioneers in developing this thing called audit logs. Per what you said, Daryl, it does give you that history of everything you do. I'll be honest, most of our clients, their initial pain points around this is around troubleshooting. So it's trying to answer that question when a rep complains, why didn't I get that lead? That belongs to me. And that gets escalated to the CRO. Using our audit logs, you can answer that in 5 seconds and be like, look, that lead was in Korea, and that goes to our APEC channel partner for our rules of engagement. So, hey, we can change that, but and that's a 5-minute conversation versus usually that takes hours. Now, what you're suggesting is, hey, look, if you look across all these transactions, how do you actually modify your go to market, right? In order to do that. And I think we're just on the tip of the iceberg of doing that, partly because of two things. One is you have to build up that data set over time. Right. And secondly, culturally, I think we're getting to the point where people are willing to trust that, because remember, some of the things could be like, well, based on like conversion rates, right? Give all the leads to this rep and none to that. That has significant impact on people's quotas and stuff like that. And so I think most folks aren't yet at the stage where they're really willing to make radical changes around that in order to trust the data. And then two, you also have to, like, if you have a new rep, you got to give them some data to work on, right? You got to give them some leads to build up those type of things. So I'd say I don't have a lot of clients who are completely willing to just trust an algorithm or even AI to be like, hey, let me do this. Most of them are doing a combination of being very agile. So you put together the go to market, you understand what's going on, you analyze the data, and then you make changes based on what you see, but it's still a little bit more human driven. The great thing of working with LeanData, we do have that data set. I do have some clients who are dumping it out into data warehouses like Snowflake and are starting that pace. But I'd say we're in inning 1 of 9. We're not like, hey, we're not yet at the nirvana where the algorithm just comes in and just like, oh, based on your go-to-market ICP, here's exactly how you should structure your sales team and do that. We're not quite there yet, but it's exciting times ahead. So
Exciting times ahead. I mean, everyone's terrified of AI in some way, shape, or form. And, I keep talking to Alexa, and she's still pretty dumb. I think that's one of the most developed AIs on the planet. And yet,
well,
a lot, to ask for there. Well, in terms of being able to really advise a client, because that's certainly become a far more important aspect of software vendors, is not just how to use the solution, but how to run your business more effectively as a result of the data we're going to give you. It really does focus on those revenue operations. But how about in terms of targeting clients and being able to evaluate? All right, we were going after Global 2000, but it looks like we're getting far better traction in the mid market, or it looks like from an SMB perspective, we're really missing opportunities. What sort of signals can they derive from LeanData?
Yeah, so from a lean app perspective, we kind of think of ourselves as sitting like we think of ourselves as Revops' best friend. We kind of in between, and what we're trying to do is manage all your signals that you get from all your martech, right, and make sure that's associated to the right place. The best way to think of our product in the middle is someone on your team is going to build a flowchart diagram of how all your signals and plays work together. Your marketing to sales handoff. Lean Data takes that flowchart and makes it actionable. So we kind of sit in between across those things. We're a little bit about Switzerland in the sense that we're going to work with whichever signals you have, right, and allow you to do that. We are not actually a signal provider ourselves, so we're kind of an intermediary around that. But what we do is we ensure that the signals you do get run to the right place. And so when you do run your ROI and decide, as you said, hey, we're a little bit short here or there, it becomes very transparent in lean data, and you kind of avoid the thing. What happens is like marketing generates a bunch of leads, and someone's like, no one followed up, and you're like, well, then I don't know my answer. Were those good leads or not good leads? You don't have that answer because there was no follow up. Lean Data's value proposition, we ensure that does happen, and then you can actually evaluate what is working and what is not working. Does that make sense? It's a little bit of a slight twist. So
No, that definitely does. In terms of it's attribution. You're attributing what leads are leading to what actions, and making sure that actions are taken and measuring them. Well, let's talk a little bit about your partner community, and what sort of partners have been experiencing the most success with their clients introducing LeanData as a vendor.
yeah, absolutely. So I think we think of like I mentioned in the diagram. There's two sets of partners. We have signal partners, and then we have kind of play partners. Our main partner underneath is the CRM. So we are top partner for Salesforce as a primary CRM, although we're moving to other CRMs shortly. But yes, we're considered like we definitely make the CRM a whole lot better. On the signal side, I think it's about making the signals more actionable. We work very closely with like some big intent vendors, like a Sixth Sense, a Demand Base, and those type of folks to make sure their signals are being followed up with. Other ones that I kind of like user gems. I don't know if you've heard of them. They track whether or not people have changed jobs. And so we work pretty closely with them using that as a trigger when someone changes a job. How do you run the right sales play? How do you make sure the sales rep's alerted? How do you make sure like if they're moved to a new account, how do you drive that? So we use that both internally and we have a number of customers that have set that up. So in terms of a signal provider. And then we do work with kind of all the sales engagement folks to automate different types of things where so such and such thing happen. How do you kick off a cadence, or how do you make sure that the systems and the reps are aware? Our top integration is driving is kind of Slack and Microsoft Teams actually.
Mhm.
So when people are using not just assigning a lead, but actually alerting them. Like a cool one of the cool plays you have is like, hey, someone comes to your website, we can Slack the rep that hey, respond ASAP. If in 2 hours the rep hasn't responded, we can Slack their manager. This has not been responded to. 24 hours, we can take the lead away and assign to someone else. So those type of alerting, but also just kind of follow up and measuring SLAs. That is probably the number one use case from an integration perspective, that kind of notifications. But I do think that underlying business cases around how do you make more sense of like an intent signal from one of those vendors, and what kind of interesting things can you run on the sales plays. I think those are starting to pick up traction. The folks that do that are seeing huge benefits from their ROI, and it's a kind of this classic 1+1=3. It makes the MarTech vendors more successful, and makes the sales guys more sticky, and it makes us kind of that orchestration layer even more valuable. So,
Have you noted any? There's a profusion, I would have to say, of sales consultants on the marketplace. Many of them former operators like yourself that have decided to lend their talents. in a consultative fashion, and also more mature agencies. Some of the global SIs obviously are major partners of Salesforce, and would feature revenue operations as an adjunct of their practice. Have you noted any of those consulting organizations that have really differentiated themselves in working with startups and helping them?
Yeah, no, I think we work with a number of these folks. I think they bring us into situations where we can add value, and it's great. I would say the ones that kind of stand out are the ones that really focus on like, hey, the client first and making sure that they meet their needs. Some of them do rev shares with vendors. I actually find some of the ones that are most influential are the ones who don't. I'm going to go against a little bit of our partners, but like I'll call someone like a Cloud Kettle who has like referred us a bunch of folks, but they flat out refuse to take partner fees because they want to be absolutely agnostic, right? I actually like all our partners, so doesn't mean like and we will work with them and they've made clients successful. But I thought that was an interesting model where they're just like, we're going to recommend you. We're gonna know that you're the best vendor, and they're kind of willing to put their money where their mouth is in some respects. So that would be one. But like I said, I think it's always best to be working with partners when possible because as a vendor, we want to focus on making the technology part successful. A key part of it is the strategy, right? Like I said, we can work across any go-to-market motion, and it works better for us when the client has a clear idea of what they are trying to accomplish. And oftentimes, the consultant can bring that and that advice. We have experience as well, but they have a better relationship in some respects, and we generally like to prefer to work with them. Are starting to work with some of the global SIs, especially from larger enterprise around digital transformation. And in those cases, we very much prefer having like an Accenture or a Deloitte in there, just because oftentimes it's not the technology, it's just getting all the stakeholders in a room and getting them to talk to each other for the first time at some of these large clients. And so I think the consulting firms are very much set up to do that. There's one or a few of our enterprises that we had to do it ourselves. We did get folks there, but it probably took a little bit longer, and than if they were working with someone like an Accenture.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. In the early days, obviously, you come from the revenue side of the equation versus the development side of the equation. So when you set out to develop LeanData, you had a very clear business problem that you were looking to solve, and you had a very specific market that you were going to go after. Tell me about that first, those first half dozen lighthouse accounts. What were you doing from a sales perspective, and what did you learn from essentially being a pure evangelist?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, like most folks, I had my target 50 clients. Being in the Silicon Valley, these were your fast-growing tech companies out there. And so, kind of like going down, targeting those lists. A lot of it was hand-to-hand combat. I think some of them I had personal relationships with. Others of them got introductions from either investors or advisors or other folks. And really, I think the first part is you're just kind of selling your passion and selling the pain, right? So it was really around, hey, do you have dirty data problems in your CRM? And like I said, most people were like, yeah. And then we're like, look, I think we can help you fix that, and I'm willing to invest the time. And so you're a little bit selling yourself. It was almost a little bit consulting in some respects, right? And that's one of the things. So I signed up our first 20 clients, and then I did find that we tried then next having like SDRs or AE sell it, but it was a little bit different. They kind of fell a little bit flat because they couldn't really sell the same thing. They couldn't sell their expertise, right? We were able to sell like our internal expertise, and they couldn't do that because it's hard to sell a consulting oriented thing. And so at that stage, it was about what's the productized version of that that's very, very clear. And we need to get that before we could get the next set to get from 20 to 100. And that was really around the notion of lead to account matching. So the fact, so when we were just selling, hey, we can clean your database as a consulting service, yeah, no, that didn't scale for the sales team. When it became, hey, we can solve this problem called lead to account matching, no one else is doing that. Do you need to solve that motion to become ABM? that's when we could actually have reps be successful in being able to pitch that, because that was more of a solution than just a consulting.
So developing that playbook, developing that real productization of the solution. Were you driving that personally, or did you bring somebody in from the outside to essentially write that and essentially consult with you about your successful sales motions, define the problem, and then develop the sales process?
Yeah, no. So we had hired. So we were venture backed fairly early on. So we had hired a VP of sales, and he was initially actually working with us to try to sell the dirty data consulting business problem, and it wasn't working. And I'd say we iterated our way there. And actually, there's a funny story in our history where it was clear we actually pivoted at that point in time. It wasn't working, and he and I met, and I was just like, yeah, I don't know if we're making much traction. I don't know if we should part ways. And he was like, yeah, this isn't working for me. And that's like, unless you can come up with an idea around how we productize something that could sell pretty quickly. It was actually a couple months before Marketo Summit. He was like, yeah, I know you guys are working on this lead to account matching. What if I take that? Can I make it productized and do something? It's called a view. And so it was, I will give him credit that he came up with it, but that wasn't what he was initially brought on to do. It was only through iterations and working together that we actually got there. And he ended up staying on for quite a bit of the scale for about 7 years. So we then worked together for another 5 years. So I would credit him. His name was Brian Burkett, and he was kind of our first head of sales, and he got through that hump.
So he was ideally suited to iterating. He's
Mm-hmm.
an early stage VP of sales. He was coming up with new ideas. He was coming up with new sales motions. He was coming up with new presentations, decks, training, all of that good stuff. Good job, Brian. This is a great commercial for him. Maybe we'll put this on his website for him. I think he'd appreciate that. Well, once you got to that $5 million range of run rate, what did you need from a sales leader at that point?
Yeah, so I think at that point in time, it changes to a little bit to be more scale, right? How do you put together the infrastructure, the right tech stack? Things like a Revops teams become much more important, right? You can't just rely on AEs to do everything, and so putting together that infrastructure and some of those playbooks become much more important. And so that was kind of the next scale, and sometimes people who have done that before can help you get there faster. And so that's certainly kind of we were able to leverage folks from external expertise who had kind of worked at previous companies like an Exactly to kind of help us scale to that next level. So
Did you bring in a new CRO at that point?
we brought a new CRO actually at around past 10 million in AR. So
Okay,
we
10 million.
scaled a little bit. Yeah. So for that next stage, we did bring in a new CRO. His name was Steve DeMarco, who had previously been at Exactly for quite a bit of their journey. So
Okay. And, and looking back in retrospect, it's been a few years. Do you think you should have brought him in earlier, or do you think that it was just right? It's like, all right, we need this level of revenue operations expertise and scaling expertise.
I think it was just about right. Maybe if you could have done maybe a year earlier, but I think it was about the right time. I think each market oftentimes it's not just the internal execution. There's also market dynamics that kind of drive it. And so I think when you're building your own category, sometimes things take a little bit longer than say like if you're trying to disrupt an existing category. So.
When you obviously coming from a revenue background, and as you said, you closed those first 20 deals. And actually being able to close those first 20 deals is because you came from the sales background versus a technologist who's running a firm for the first time as the CEO. That's going to not be as feasible. They're just not going to have that nascent, that native skill set. So for you, you necessarily had to start backing out of the sales process as you brought in sales executives that could hold on to, that could own more of it and could develop more of it. What was your philosophy in terms of staying in touch with the sales process, which is a necessity for a CEO, even to this day, you've got to be there in the room at some point,
Right.
particularly for your major accounts. They're going to want to meet you. Hopefully, they'll meet you online as well. I hope this will help. But what has your philosophy been as far as when to, what should your role be in those early days once you hire your first sales leader?
Yeah, no, I think ultimately I feel my job as CEO is to empower and unblock those beneath me. So I make myself available. If I can help out with deals, I'm happy to do it, right? But I also don't want to micromanage at the same time. So I think for me, I think if it's helpful for me to join some of the sales calls, I'm happy to do so. At the same time, I think. Especially these days with net retention being so key, what I do spend a lot of my time is with our existing customers and building those relationships. Because taking those feedbacks, like I said, we're very customer driven in kind of our roadmap. And so I like to spend a lot of times at taking out top customers to dinner, being at trade shows, and those type of things. And what I'm always looking for is customer feedback, but also relationship building. And what we've noticed over time, especially in the SaaS ecosystem, is there's this notion of virality where if you treat certain customers well, they'll use you at multiple places. And oftentimes those relationships that I have with those senior stakeholders start with just inviting them to a thought leadership dinner. Not trying, no agenda, no renewal, nothing, just inviting them to a thought leadership dinner. And I've had many folks who I've built relationships with and maintained across multiple companies that they've been at, right? And that's really helpful to have that kind of those relationships. And a lot of the ideas that we discuss at some of these thought leadership dinners do make it into our roadmap and lead to our next stage of evolution. And so the more I have those understanding of our customer pain points and what those guys are dealing with, it also helps me a little bit when I do need to jump in on the sales side. I can be like, well, let me tell you how Siemens does this or Splunk or someone else on there because I actually do have a deep understanding of how our customers are using what their latest challenges are, and it makes you more effective. Uh, Whenever you do have free time, it's just a good idea to just go reach out to a customer and catch up with them, right? You just learn so much. And me, like a lot of other people, we get busy, and I'll probably say I don't do it as often as I should. It's not as theoretical, and this is where I rely on a little bit events. So there are these big events, and I try to do dinners around them. And sometimes my teams will try to automate it. And they're like, "Hey, Evan, we'll send out the email blast for you." And I'm like, "Wait a second, no, I'm willing to spend this time to curate this list because there are people on this list that I specifically want to personally reach out with and build a relationship." And well, yeah, it's manual, but it's worth it, right? If it cause, and sometimes people don't come to dinner, but they respond back, and I have a touch point, or I jump on a call. That's really valuable. There's some of this you don't want to automate away in some respects.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think that, even though you may hire a chief customer officer that's in charge of that customer experience, you are the brand. You are the brand ambassador. And in a product led environment, in a product led company, having that relationship with the customers that you're reaching out to them, you're creating a relationship before you engage with them. And then after they've engaged with them, really making sure that they're successful, not just at renewal time, but as business owners and, monitoring that, not just showing up when it's time for a contract to be signed again. Good show. I think that's it's prudent, it's good business, and it certainly is a better way to run a company. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, no, I think the main thing is what we talked about last is just being very customer driven and customer first. I think that's always helped, and I think being a entrepreneur is a long journey, and enjoy the ups and downs. But I think if you continue to listen to your customers, they'll usually lead you the right way. So
Marvelous. Well, Evan, thank you so very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. And I look forward to reading about great things happening in the next stage and the next stage with
thanks so much, Daryl. It's been
LeanData.
it's been a pleasure on my side as well. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Mar Talks. Please leave a review and a rating on your platform of choice. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major podcast platforms. To find out more about how the Rosenstein Group can help you find the right leaders for your client development teams in martech and e-commerce, please visit our website, rosensteingroup.com.